Ashes of Blackridge. The inferno consumed everything. Flames licked the sky, black smoke rolled like storm clouds, and the very bones of Blackridge groaned under the weight of its destruction. Towers collapsed one by one, their crumbling silhouettes vanishing into the firestorm. Steel screamed as it twisted, walls shuddered, and the air itself seemed alive with the roar of death. Detective Laura Jensen lay in the dirt of the east yard, her ears ringing from the blast that had ended Reaper. The giant's smoldering corpse had fallen inches from her, his machete now nothing more than a melted shard of metal. She was alive, but every nerve screamed in pain. Her arm was sliced open, her ribs bruised, her throat raw from smoke. She rolled onto her back, coughing, staring up at the night sky. No stars, just fire. Beside her, Ramirez groaned, clutching his bloodied leg. His face was ghostly pale, sweat pouring down his forehead. "Laura," his voice was thin, fragile. "Is it over?" Jensen turned her head, staring at the flames devouring the breach. Trucks burned in twisted heaps. Dozens of inmates lay dead or writhing in the dirt, their screams drowned by the roar of fire. The mob was broken, scattered, but not gone. In the shadows beyond the flames, survivors were regrouping, their eyes glowing with hatred. "No," she whispered. "Not yet." She dragged herself to her feet, wincing as her wounds protested. Her pistol was gone, lost in the dirt. All she had was a blood-stained baton clutched in her trembling hand. "Help me up," Ramirez gasped. Jensen pulled him to his feet, his weight heavy against her shoulder. Together, they staggered toward the gatehouse, the last bastion of order in the dying prison. The guards inside waved them in, slamming the door shut just as another pack of inmates hurled themselves against it. The interior was suffocating, the air thick with sweat and cordite. A handful of guards remained, their eyes wide with exhaustion, rifles trembling in their hands. They looked at Jensen like she was both a savior and a ghost. "Status?" she rasped. A sergeant with soot smeared across his face shook his head. "We're finished, detective. Half the blocks are gone. Communications are dead. Reinforcements aren't coming. The state's written us off." Jensen clenched her jaw. She'd suspected as much. To the outside world, Blackridge was already a tomb. No one would risk men and resources to save it. Ramirez sagged against the wall, his breathing shallow. "So this is it," he muttered. "We die here." Jensen turned to him, firelight flickering in her eyes. "Not if I can help it." The sergeant barked a bitter laugh. "With respect, ma'am, you're not getting out. The gates are holding for now, but the wolves won't stop. And when this place finally falls, it's taking us all with it." Jensen's gaze drifted to the monitors still faintly glowing in the corner. Static flickered across most screens, but a few still showed fragments of the prison. She saw flames in the chapel, shadows moving in the library, bodies sprawled in the infirmary. And then her eyes locked on Block F. A group of inmates huddled in the darkness, armed and waiting. But it wasn't the mob that chilled her blood, it was what they guarded. Crates. Wooden stenciled crates. The same kind she'd seen in the freezer. The same kind that carried the pipeline's secrets. Her chest tightened. Proof. King was dead. His confession meant nothing without evidence. But those crates, if she could get to them, might be enough to expose the network. She turned to Ramirez. "We're not done. Not until we bring something out of this fire." He shook his head weakly. "Laura, you'll die trying. And for what? Files? Papers? Nobody out there's going to care." "They'll care if it's big enough," she shot back. "If it's undeniable. Dalton died for this. Cruz died for this. If we walk out empty-handed, we've failed them all." The sergeant swore under his breath. "You're insane. You'll never make it to Block F." Jensen gripped the baton tighter. "Then I'll die trying." The descent into ashes. The corridor outside the gatehouse was a furnace. Smoke billowed in choking clouds, the floor slick with blood and ash. Jensen moved like a phantom, Ramirez staggering at her side. Every step was agony, every breath a fight. They passed corpses sprawled against the walls, guards, inmates, men burned beyond recognition. The silence was broken only by the crackle of fire and the distant roar of wolves still fighting in the yard. When they reached Block F, the heavy steel door hung open, warped by heat. Inside, the block was a shadow of its former self. Cells gaped like open mouths, their bars melted and bent. Firelight flickered across graffiti-scrawled walls. And in the center, just as the monitors had shown, the crates waited. But they weren't unguarded. A half-dozen inmates crouched around them, rifles in their hands, their faces smeared with ash. Their leader, a wiry man with eyes like knives, stood as Jensen entered. Well, he drawled. The badge herself. Looking for souvenirs? Jensen raised the baton, her body trembling with exhaustion but her voice steady. Step aside. Those crates don't belong to you. The man laughed, a harsh sound in the smoke. They don't belong to anyone anymore. This prison is ours. The world outside is next. And these, he patted one of the crates, are our ticket. He raised his rifle. The world slowed. Jensen lunged forward, swinging the baton with every ounce of strength left in her. It cracked against the man's skull, dropping him instantly. Gunfire erupted, deafening in the confined space. Bullets sparked against steel, tearing through shadows. Ramirez fired back, his shots wild but enough to scatter the inmates. Jensen grabbed the fallen leader's rifle, the weight familiar and comforting in her hands. She turned it on the wolves and fired, each shot precise, each one dropping another man. When the smoke cleared, the block was silent. Bodies lay sprawled across the floor, blood pooling beneath them. Jensen lowered the rifle, her chest heaving. Ramirez staggered to the crates, prying one open with trembling hands. Inside, neat rows of weapons gleamed under the firelight. Pistols, rifles, ammunition. Enough to arm an army. Another crate spilled open, revealing bricks of heroin, bundles of cash, ledgers stamped with cartel seals. Proof. Jensen's throat tightened. This is it. This is what they died for. Ramirez sank to the floor, his face twisted in pain. So what now? You can't carry all of this out. She gripped the ledger, tucking it under her arm. I don't need it all. Just enough to show the world what Blackridge really was. Before Ramirez could respond, a voice echoed from the shadows. Impressive, detective. Jensen froze. From the smoke stepped a man in a guard's uniform, his rifle slung across his chest. His face was sharp, cold, his eyes glittering with malice. She recognized him, Officer Harris. The same man who'd warned her to stop digging. I told you, he said, his voice smooth. The code of silence keeps us alive. And you just broke it wide open. He raised his rifle. The betrayer. Jensen raised hers, her heart pounding. Harris, you were in on it all along. He smirked. Of course I was. We all were. You think King built this empire alone? No. We built it, and now that he's gone, it's mine. He stepped closer, the firelight reflecting off his weapon. Hand me the ledger, and maybe I'll let you crawl out of here alive. Jensen's grip tightened. You'll kill me anyway. Harris chuckled. Smart girl. The standoff stretched, the fire crackling louder, the walls groaning under the weight of collapse. Jensen's pulse thundered in her ears. She couldn't outshoot him, not wounded, not with Ramirez down. But she could outthink him. Her eyes flicked to the crates, to the fuel-soaked floor, to the flames licking closer. Slowly she lowered her rifle. Harris's grin widened. Then she fired, not at him but at the crate. The explosion ripped through Block F, fire engulfing the room in a blinding flash. Harris screamed as flames devoured him, his rifle clattering to the ground. The crates erupted, ammunition cooking off in a chain reaction of thunder and fire. Jensen grabbed Ramirez, dragging him through the inferno, shielding the ledger under her arm. The block collapsed behind them, the fire swallowing Harris's screams. They stumbled into the yard, coughing, bleeding but alive. The prison roared around them, collapsing tower by tower. Blackridge was dying. But Jensen carried its truth in her arms. Epilogue of ashes. As dawn broke over the horizon, the inferno painted the sky blood red. Helicopters circled above, their searchlights cutting through smoke. The state had finally arrived, not to save Blackridge but to bury it. Jensen sat in the dirt outside the walls, Ramirez unconscious beside her, the ledger clutched to her chest. Her face was streaked with blood and ash, her eyes hollow with exhaustion. Reporters would later call it the deadliest prison riot in history. Officials would blame gangs, guards, anyone but themselves. But Jensen knew the truth. Blackridge hadn't been a failure. It had been a design, a pipeline, a conspiracy. And though she had survived the flames, she knew the wolves would rise again. Because the ashes of Blackridge were not the end. They were the beginning. Next, the cover-up. The sun rose blood-red over the smoldering ruins of Blackridge. Detective Laura Jensen sat on the cracked asphalt of the outer yard, her back against a slab of rubble, the prison's last breath curling into the dawn sky. Her skin was blistered from the fire, her arm wrapped in a makeshift bandage, and every muscle in her body screamed with exhaustion. But she was alive. Ramirez lay beside her, unconscious but breathing shallowly, his leg mangled from shrapnel. In her lap lay the battered ledger she had pulled from the flames. The ink was smeared, the paper charred around the edges, but the names and numbers were still legible. Shipments, accounts, payouts, politicians, proof. The faint thump of helicopter rotors cut through the silence. Laura raised her head, her dry eyes narrowing as military choppers descended onto the smoking field beyond the prison. Soldiers in black tactical gear poured out, rifles raised, sweeping the area with brutal efficiency. Fire trucks and armored vehicles followed, engines rumbling. For a heartbeat, Laura felt relief. Reinforcements. Rescue. Maybe, finally, help. Then she saw the man who stepped from the lead helicopter. Senator Aldrich. Tall, sharp-suited, his silver hair immaculate even in the smoke, his expression calm and calculating. She recognized him from briefings, press conferences, the kind of politician who always seemed untouchable. And there, beside him, were state officials in pressed uniforms, their shoes shining even in the ash. The moment Aldrich's eyes locked on her, Laura's chest tightened. Because his face didn't show relief. It showed recognition. And calculation. The briefing. By noon, the flames were smothered, the dead counted, the prison declared a total loss. News helicopters circled overhead, their cameras capturing only what officials allowed. Lines of inmates lay in chains on the scorched ground, guarded by soldiers. The few surviving staff were herded into makeshift tents, their statements carefully filtered through the chain of command. Laura sat on a folding chair outside a medical tent, a blanket draped over her shoulders, the ledger clutched to her chest. Ramirez was inside on a stretcher, surgeons working frantically to save his leg. Senator Aldrich approached, flanked by two men in suits whose eyes were too sharp, too cold. Not staffers. Not aides. Operatives. Detective Jensen, Aldrich said smoothly, his voice like silk over steel. A miracle you survived. Laura's lips curled into a bitter smile. Survival's all it was. A lot of good men didn't. Aldrich gave a solemn nod, the kind politicians practiced in mirrors. Tragedy. A terrible, senseless riot. But rest assured the state will rebuild. Stronger. Safer. His eyes flicked to the ledger in her lap. Laura tightened her grip. You knew, she said quietly. Didn't you? Aldrich's smile didn't falter. Knew what, detective? That Blackridge wasn't just a prison. That it was a pipeline. A machine for moving guns and drugs under the guise of order. She leaned forward, her voice sharp. You knew. Maybe you helped build it. For a moment, something cold flickered in his eyes. Then he chuckled softly as though she were a child telling ghost stories. Conspiracy theories, detective. Trauma makes us see patterns where there are none. You've been through hell. You're tired. You're hurt. I understand. He reached out almost casually as if to pat her shoulder, but his hand angled toward the ledger. Laura jerked back, clutching it tighter. Don't touch it. Aldrich's expression didn't change, but the air around him grew sharper, colder. His operatives shifted slightly, their hands brushing the outlines of concealed weapons. I'll need to take that into evidence, Aldrich said smoothly. For the official investigation. Laura laughed bitterly, her voice hoarse. Official investigation? You mean official cover-up? This is proof, Aldrich. Names. Dates. Payments. This isn't just Blackridge. It's senators, contractors, corporations. People like you. Aldrich leaned closer, his voice dropping to a whisper. And what do you think happens if that ledger goes public, detective? Do you think the world rises in outrage? No. They'll dismiss it as fabrication. The media will bury it. And you, his eyes bored into hers. You'll vanish. Another casualty of a riot nobody will ever fully understand. The operatives flanked her now, shadows closing in. Laura's heart pounded, but her grip on the ledger never loosened. Then you'll have to kill me for it. For the first time, Aldrich's smile faded. His eyes hardened, his voice a low growl. Don't tempt me. Smoke and lies. That afternoon, the first press conference was staged on the smoldering ruins of Blackridge. Reporters in neat suits stood before cameras, microphones bristling. Senator Aldrich took the podium, flanked by generals and state officials. Last night, he said, his voice grave, a tragic riot claimed the lives of dozens of guards and inmates. It was the result of gang violence, poor leadership, and outdated infrastructure. But let me be clear, this was not systemic. This was not corruption. This was chaos born of evil men. The cameras clicked. The reporters scribbled. The story was written. Laura stood in the crowd of survivors, her blanket wrapped tight around her shoulders, the ledger hidden beneath. Her blood boiled as she listened. Every word was a lie, a neat little bow to package a massacre. Beside her, Ramirez stirred weakly on his stretcher. His face was pale, his eyes half open. "They're burying it," he whispered. "I know," Laura said, her throat tight. "I know." The warning. That night, Jensen sat alone outside the medical tent, the cold creeping into her bones. The prison was still smoking, the air heavy with ash. Soldiers patrolled in silence, their boots crunching on gravel. She opened the ledger, her eyes scanning the names again. Senators, judges, cartel bosses, even companies she recognized from government contracts. Each entry was another dagger pointed at the heart of power. Dangerous bedtime reading. Laura looked up sharply. A man stood in the shadows, his face hidden beneath the brim of a cap. He wasn't a soldier. He wasn't a guard. His movements were too fluid, too deliberate. "You don't know me," he said quietly, "but I know you, and I know what you have." Her grip on the ledger tightened. "If you're here for it, you'll have to fight me." The man shook his head. "I'm not here to take it. I'm here to warn you. They already decided your story dies here. The official record says you were injured in the riot and succumbed to your wounds tomorrow. A clean ending. Tragic. Forgettable." Laura's blood ran cold. "And who the hell are you?" The man stepped closer, his face still in shadow. "Someone who doesn't want to see them win. But if you want the truth out, detective, you can't trust anyone here. Not the state. Not the feds. Not the press. You'll have to run. Hide. And find a way to release it yourself." Laura swallowed hard. "And why should I believe you?" The man pulled a folded slip of paper from his jacket and dropped it at her feet. "Because I already did the same thing once. Different state. Different prison. And I barely made it out alive." Then, without another word, he melted back into the shadows. Laura picked up the paper. A single line was scrawled across it. "Ashland Motel. Room 12. Tomorrow night." Her pulse quickened. A meeting. An ally, or a trap? She looked back at the medical tent where Ramirez slept, at the soldiers patrolling, at the burning ruins of Blackridge. The network was already closing in. And she realized that surviving the prison had been the easy part. The real fight, the one for the truth, was only beginning.